Brazil, land of the Amazon, home to Christ the Redeemer, the largest country in South America, covering over 3.2 million square miles. It's the fifth largest country in the world, known for its pristine beaches, delicious fruits, carnival, and soccer. Expanding into this tropical paradise is Amazing Facts' newest effort of taking the message of the gospel to the entire world. Just over 3 years ago, Amazing Facts Brazil began bringing the Amazing Facts materials to the people of this predominantly Catholic country.
We had our first AFCO program in Paraíba, in the northeast part of Brazil. We used to say that this is our 1040 window in Brazil. This is one of the regions where the Adventist message hasn't fully spread yet. In this part of Brazil, some of the pastors are responsible for more than 15, sometimes 20 churches. And AFCO students are given the opportunity of helping those pastors conducting Bible series in these churches. And we even have some of the pastors, the local pastors, come and teach some of our classes here.
On the heels of a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, Pastor Doug and Karen made their way to the bustling city of Sao Paulo. There they made connections with the Brazilian Hope Channel, Novo Temple, and toured their facilities. Followed by a tour of UNASP, the Adventist University Center in the state of Sao Paulo. Pastor Doug and the Amazing Facts team toured the largest university in the South American division and met with the dean of the school. Several students stopped Pastor Doug to take a picture with him as they had read his book, The Richest Caveman, as part of their Pathfinder Club requirements. They also toured the recently opened Museum of Bible Archaeology on the campus, which is full of many interesting biblical artifacts, including a 300-year-old olive tree that was transplanted from Israel. Pastor Doug and the team then stopped to record a Fact of Faith video in the city of Alhambra, a Dutch colony in the middle of Brazil.
After World War II, there were a lot of people from the Netherlands that lost their houses. So the Dutch government appealed to several countries to see if they'd be willing to take refugees. Many countries refused, but Brazil invited them to come. When they came, they brought their culture with them, and part of that was planting flowers. And you might be surprised to learn that 75% of all the flowers sold in Brazil come from this Dutch-like municipality. It doesn't take long to see that flowers were the Dutch people's specialty. There's flowers everywhere. Everywhere you go in this community, you see evidence of their culture. You think you're in Holland. They would use these windmills to grind the grain, and it would lower through an elevator after being ground in the grist. When they need to repair the sheets, I think they turn the windmill with this thing. They even maintain some of the customs, like the Dutch wooden shoes, klompen. That's where you get the idea that you're klomping around in the woods. Well, that's my size. Look at that. I could probably wear these for about 5 minutes. Just klomping around. The Dutch actually did use these big wooden shoes called klompen, but they used them with thick woolen socks, so they sort of stuck on your foot. I think this one might fit me. I've been called Yeti before. I got a big foot. When the Dutch people immigrated from the Netherlands and came to Alhambra, they brought with them their culture. There's something different about the way that they eat, the way they talk, the way they dress, their architecture, and yet they're living in the rainforest. So they represent their country in really a different world. This reminds me of what the Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 20. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. So every Christian is really living as a representative of Jesus in a foreign land, and we want to represent our King in what we say and how we dress and how we live so that we are his ambassadors. Are you representing the King?
After producing the Amazing Fact of Faith video, Pastor Doug traveled to the final destination for the trip.
They invited us down for a special convocation down there at the Tree of Life Christian Retreat Center.
Pastor Doug was the keynote speaker for the 5-day camp meetings together with 6 other presenters who spoke on various topics aimed to strengthen and uplift the church in these turbulent times of Earth's final days. 1,700 people signed up to attend all 5 days, with well over 2,000 attending on Sabbath.
We not only had the Sabbath program, but what else was happening?
Well, there was also some training that was taking place. So we had an opportunity to do a training program and just meet a lot of wonderful people. And of course, it's all Portuguese there. And yet people came up to us and they said how much they appreciate the programming. So there's been translation happening. Folks know about Amazing Facts. They like to watch the programs.
In March, Amazing Facts was given the opportunity to begin broadcasting weekly sermons by Pastor Doug, Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m., dubbed into Portuguese on Rede Brazil TV, the 5th largest secular free-to-air TV station that's accessible all around the country. Christian, who'd been watching the program in Portuguese, came to the meetings to meet Pastor Doug and share his testimony.
I came through a deep inner search, a longing, a void, an emptiness inside me. I was seeking answers that I just couldn't find in the religion I had followed. That religion didn't fulfill my soul. It didn't answer all the questions I had. And having grown up in that religion, I realized that many of its teachings didn't align with what is found in the Bible. So I decided to leave the church. I drifted away for a while, spent time in the world, but I kept searching. I wasn't an atheist yet. I still consider myself a Catholic at that time, but I started exploring other churches, stepping outside the Catholic Church to see if somewhere else I could finally feel that emptiness, but nothing satisfied. I found churches that didn't take their mission seriously. They seemed more interested in financial gain than in sharing the message of God. And they often talked more about the devil than they did about the Lord. And because of that, I felt discouraged and spiritually dry. I fell into a dark place. And because of that sadness, that emptiness, I decided to let go of everything. I gave up. I became an atheist. I would never again talk about God. I would just live the life I always wanted to live. Still, I continued to search for some knowledge. I started to read books on Greek and Roman philosophy, exploring every school of thought, including Stoicism, Buddhism. No matter where it came from, I just absorbed it to see if any of them could ease the emptiness I was carrying. And after all that reading, I realized that nothing helped. I searched, but nothing helped. There was only one book I refused to open because I felt a strong aversion caused by the churches I had attended and because the way those churches had misrepresented the Bible. But one day I said, okay, I'm going to open this book, but it's going to be on my own terms. I'm going to read just a small piece of it. And I started to read the book of Proverbs. And through this book, which is a timeless book of divine wisdom, I began to feel drawn in. That interest awakened something within me, and I went back to the beginning, reading from the Genesis all the way to Revelation, and I didn't stop there. I also searched for more information in the internet, and I finally discovered some remarkable pastors who spoke in such a way that finally answered the questions I had in my heart. And along this journey, I had always loved English, so I looked for content in English. I was looking for something that could help me to learn the language and also nourish me with God's Word. Then I searched online to see if I could find a preacher who could speak what I longed for in English, and I found Pastor Doug. I really enjoyed his powerful, inspiring way of sharing the message and bringing the Bible to life through storytelling. I fell more and more in love with the truth. And then I found that many of his videos had been translated into Portuguese. That was great. At the end of some of his videos, there was an advertisement for a camp meeting where several well-known pastors would be speaking, including Pastor Doug Batchelor. The event was 7 hours away from where I live, but I didn't mind because I couldn't afford to miss it. I was very interested in knowing what Pastor Doug and the other speakers had to say. And you know, it's been so good to be here. It is transforming me in so many ways. I've met amazing people here, people who truly made this journey worthwhile. These sermons are changing my life completely. What encouraged me to come here today was Pastor Doug and Amazing Facts. Thanks to their teachings and honesty and transparency of the church's work. Thank you, Amazing Facts, for changing my life.
Thank you, friends, so much for supporting Amazing Facts. You're changing thousands of lives like that of Christian all the time. God bless you.
Really, the big thing about this whole time that we had in Brazil was an opportunity that I think was a divine arrangement where God opened up the way for us to do a broadcast, a live broadcast of the evening presentations that you did.
They offered us some primetime slots to be broadcast across the country of our convocation while we were there.
Each of Pastor Doug's presentations were broadcast live across Brazil during the Easter weekend. During the weekend, the Amazing Facts Brazil team displayed many of their printed magazines and study guides in the Portuguese language. Attendees at the camp meeting lined up several nights to purchase At Jesus' Feet and the Richest Caveman books, which sold out. Pastor Doug was on hand to sign books and take pictures with the many new friends instantly made.
It was more than just a 2-day set of meetings. They actually started on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but then they finished up on Monday.
The team could almost see God physically opening doors of opportunity before their eyes, as again the station manager invited Pastor Doug to appear during the 6:30 p.m. National News Hour to be interviewed on Monday.
So we all got up on Monday morning. We had one more presentation as we were wrapping things up. And of course, we received the news that that very morning, the Pope had passed away. Now, of course, there was a lot of interest. Brazil has a very large Catholic population. And so you can imagine everybody was talking about this recent news. But then we were invited that same day to come to that same network, Red TV. They invited you to come and talk a little bit about Amazing Facts and what you were doing that very evening.
I know this was surreal because Brazil not only has a lot of Catholics, it's got the highest number of Catholics of any country in the world. More than Mexico, or I thought it was the Philippines, but it's Brazil. And so here we are in this country where a large part of the populace is grieving that their religious leader has passed away. They invite us to a national TV program for prime time, 7 o'clock in the evening. And then they ask us questions about, you know, what is Amazing Facts and what is your testimony and why did you become an Adventist and what do you think Revelation has to say? And then they wanted me to comment on my thoughts about the passing of the Pope, which was a delicate situation for a Protestant.
Amazing Facts é ministério dedicado a compartilhar o Evangelho de Jesus Cristo e as mensagens angélicas de Apocalipse, né, em todo o mundo. Todo mundo por meio da televisão, rádio, literatura, Bíblia, ao vivo e eventos da profecia, internet e treinamento evangelístico. Aqui, em nosso país, Amazing Facts é transmitido pela Rede Brasil, de televisão, aos domingos, às 8 horas da manhã. Então, nós estamos recebendo o pastor Doug Batchelor, que é presidente da Amazing Facts Internacional. You are welcome here, okay?
They were only supposed to give us 5 minutes. But the news anchor, a man named Hermano Henning, he's known across the country, he seemed so intrigued, he actually broke from Portuguese into English to talk to me on the air, and my translator then had to translate for him. And something really amazing happened during that time is, I don't speak Portuguese, I'll speak a little bit of Spanish. All week long I couldn't understand what was being said. But during that program, after he switched from English back to Portuguese, I understood everything he was saying and I understood what my translator was saying. I'm thinking, what's going on? I don't know Portuguese, but I know exactly what they're saying. Then after the program, I didn't understand anymore. But it's like I momentarily had the gift of hearing. And so we had this incredible interview. It was like one of those God moments that the Lord opens the door for Seventh-day Adventist ministers to be talking to a Catholic nation in primetime television the day the Pope died and explaining prophecy. And we actually talked about the wound that was healed.
E por que existe caso de uma das 3 mensagens angélicas do Apocalipse? What's the meaning?
What's the meaning of these?
And this is very appropriate with what's just happened in Rome with the Pope.
Isso é bem apropriado com o que acabou de acontecer em Roma com o Papa.
Yeah, many people think that Pope Francis was in some ways a fulfillment of prophecy.
Muita gente acredita que de diversas maneiras o Papa Francisco foi um cumprimento profético.
Back in the days of Martin Luther, the Catholics and the Protestants split.
Lá nos dias de Martinho Lutero, os protestantes e os católicos se dividiram.
And the book of Revelation says that there would be a healing of that wound.
E o livro do Apocalipse diz que haveria uma cura dessa ferida mortal.
And Francis was one of the first popes who came to the U.S. Joint Congress 2015.
E o Papa Francisco foi o primeiro Papa a ir a uma sessão conjunta do Congresso e o Senado americano em 2015.
He went to Philadelphia where we signed our documents, original documents.
Ele foi a Filadélfia, onde assinamos os documentos originais.
Then he went to New York City where we had our first capital, the U.S.
Foi para Nova York, onde tivemos nossa primeira capital dos Estados Unidos.
And then Francis even said that he wanted to heal the wound between Protestants and Catholics.
Francisco chegou a dizer que ele queria curar a ferida entre católicos e protestantes.
So many Protestant Christians have seen him as sort of a fulfillment of that.
Muitos protestantes têm visto ele como um cumprimento profético dessas profecias.
I had to pinch myself when it was over. I thought, did that just happen? But the story goes on. After that, our translator, who's in charge of Amazing Facts Brazil, Handerheim, he began talking with people at the station, and they said, you ought to come back and share more in the morning. So the next morning after he drops us at the airport, because I didn't even know this till we landed, he went back to the station and he did a whole segment for their, we have like Good Morning America, they had Good Morning Brazil.
Amazing, eu já gostei do nome, Amazing Facts. Ministério que apoia a Igreja Adventista do Sétimo Dia com o nosso convidado, Handerheim. Cadê os aplausos dele, minha gente?
And he's explaining to this lady Daniel chapter 2 on national television.
You know, it was interesting, we brought from our office here a little statue of Daniel chapter 2. But it talks about the head of gold, chest, arms, and silver, and there he is on this morning show. Again, it's not a religious channel, it's just news and entertainment, they have sports. But here he is explaining the image of Daniel chapter 2 to the host, and she's standing there listening very attentively, and it's being broadcast around the country.
Medo-Persa, que dominou. Os livros de história estão aí comprovando.
Tá vendo, gente? Cultural.
Haveria um reino mais fraco ainda que iria dominar a Medo-Pérsia, a Grécia. E em seguida Roma dominaria a Grécia. E por fim, Roma não seria conquistada. Roma seria dividida em 10 tribos bárbaras, assim como temos 10 dedos nos pés.
Sim. Assim é mais fácil de aprender a história.
E assim aconteceu a história mundial, que foi prevista 600 anos antes de acontecer. Mas a profecia não termina por aí. A profecia diz que, de repente, uma pedra vai ser lançada sem o auxílio de mãos e vai atingir os pés da estátua. E vai destruir toda a estátua. O vento vai levar pela janela, essa pedra vai crescer e vai tomar conta do mundo. E isso representa o reino eterno de Deus. Wow.
Wow.
Of course, your interview the night before, first of all, they began the news, and the subject matter, as you can imagine, was the death of the Pope. And that must have gone for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. Then the very next thing was you and the interview, and then that went to the very end of the program. And I was watching, I wasn't there, but I was actually watching the program live in the hotel. And he was so intrigued. The host was so interested in hearing what you had to say, talking about the Bible. And as you mentioned, he sort of forgot that, this is all Portuguese. He obviously knows English and speaks English. And he just started talking to you in English. It was very interesting. And our translator suddenly realized, he had to translate into Portuguese.
Pois é. What about Brazil? Do you believe that Brazil there is enough room to develop your belief?
Você acredita que no Brasil temos espaço suficiente para desenvolver essas crenças suas?
Well, You know, we do amazing facts at the beginning of our radio TV broadcasts.
It was just a wonderful thing. Here you are sharing around the country, and that was something that God set up. We weren't planning on any of this.
Yeah, it was just, we had no idea. In fact, we almost canceled the meeting, but we felt impressed to go. And then we almost canceled the interview because we thought it was 5 minutes, and I had to drive an hour roughly there and back, and I thought, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so glad because it was like a highlight for the whole weekend. So we just want to thank our friends because Amazing Facts Brazil is going into orbit right now. There's publications, there's training that's going on. We're meeting people around the country. It was just wonderful to become connected with the incredible gospel work going on in that country.
We also want to thank our supporters for helping us to share this good news around the world. And we are using AI, which is really neat now. We are translating more and more of our programs into Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, and many other languages.
Bem-vindos, amigos. Estamos muito gratos por terem se juntado a nós no programa Prophecy Odyssey. E como mencionei, espero que estejam com os cintos afivelados.
And as I said, there were people coming up to us saying, thank you so much for the programs. And of course, they were listening to it in Portuguese.
So God bless you, friends. Thank you, and keep the work in Brazil and around the world in your prayers as Amazing Facts does our best to make sure that His message is our mission.
A mensagem de Deus é a nossa missão. God's message is our mission.
Opportunities to share the gospel around the world are made possible by generous donors who give what they can to support the work of God as it moves forward to Jesus' soon return. Now is the right time for you to have a part in this exciting international ministry by supporting Amazing Facts with your prayers and financial support. Visit give.amazingfacts.org to find out how you can invest in God's kingdom, or call 877-506-1751 today.
How about a few amazing facts about Brazil, the largest country in South America, Central America, and the 5th largest country in the world. With over 8.5 million square kilometers, Brazil is even bigger than the lower 48 continental U.S. states. Its border touches every country in South America except for Ecuador and Chile. The country of Brazil occupies half of all of South America's total land mass. Not only is Brazil the 5th largest country in the world, it's the 7th largest country by population. Brazil gets its name from the abundant Brazil wood trees that were a valuable source of red dye used in Europe. Brazil was ruled by the Portuguese for more than 300 years. Brazil finally declared their independence from Portugal on September 7, 1822, without any war or bloodshed. The Portuguese established sugar plantations in Brazil during the 16th century. Because so many of the indigenous people were unable to work long hours in the sugarcane fields and their populations were decimated by disease, they fled inland. So the Portuguese went to Africa and imported about 3.5 million slaves to work in the sugar plantations. Sadly, Brazil was one of the first countries in the New World to introduce slavery, and they were the last to abandon it in 1888. This is why today, the people of Brazil are a mixture of indigenous, Europeans, Africans, Asians, and people from the Middle East. Brazil also has the largest number of Japanese people outside of Japan. And they have more Lebanese people in Brazil than they have in Lebanon. It's estimated there are at least 180 languages spoken in Brazil. Brazil's first gold rush is usually dated back to 1693, for this was the year when gold was officially discovered on national soil. Brazil's economy depended mainly on the items of Brazil wood during the first years of colonization, sugarcane in the 16th and 17th century, gold and diamonds in the 18th century, and coffee and rubber in the 19th and 20th century. In fact, you could say that sugarcane was the first big cash crop that helped to subsidize exploration of the New World. And I'm gonna try this out. See. Oh, it's sweet. I don't think I'd use it in my oatmeal. Brazil is also the leading producer of oranges in the world, providing 30% of the world's total output. Brazil has the largest variety of monkeys and parrots in the world. Early mariners referred to Brazil as the land of parrots. Brazil is also home to the largest rainforest in the world, in the Amazon basin. It's estimated there are 390 billion individual trees that are divided into 16,000 species. And it's believed the trees there produce 20% of the oxygen in the world. According to media reports, by mid-2007, there were still 67 Amazon basin tribes who had never contacted modern man. These semi-nomadic indigenous people have, however, made incredible strides in modern medicine thanks to our knowledge of their use of certain plant life as health-related elixirs. Not only does Brazil have rainforest, they also have a desert with sand dunes, and some can reach 40 meters. Because the landscape of Brazil is divided up among the hundreds of tributaries of the Amazon River, it has 4,000 airports because so much of the land is inaccessible by road. Brazil has the world's largest population of Catholics, and they make up 64% of its population. After the United States of America, Brazil has the second largest population of Christians, and the largest population of Christians in South America. With all the churches and cathedrals in Brazil, one might be led to think that their religion was Christianity. But others believe it's actually what we call soccer and what they call futebol. One of the things that's really impressed me about Brazil, as I've traveled around the world, I see that many nations, people are still in their enclaves and they're all separated by their cultures. Here in Brazil, you see a beautiful blending of people into a new people. You've got the indigenous people and the Africans and the Europeans and the Lebanese and the Asians, and they've all come together, and over the centuries they've become one as one new unique people. The Bible says in Acts chapter 17 verse 26, God has made of one blood all nations. This is God's perfect design for us, that we would all be brothers and sisters. And God wants you to be part of His family, both here now and in the kingdom to come. But you need to ask Him. So ask Him if you can be adopted into that family now.